The story begins with a man running down the street introducing himself as Ju In-gong. He explains that his parents gave him this name in hopes that he would become the world's protagonist in Korean. He says his name literally means protagonist, a fact that led to endless teasing throughout his childhood, but he never minded deep down. He truly wanted to be the hero of his own story. He enters a game store, and people murmur that he's finally arrived. He brushes it off and tells the shopkeeper that the teasing needs to stop. Then he asks if the game has arrived. The shopkeeper responds that he expected Ju In-gong to show up and saved a copy for him. Night Saga re the remake of the classic game Night Saga. The game, he explains, revolves around the eternal war between humans and demons. Players can choose to be Locke the human hero or Zephyr Rancheros, the Demon King's second son, each with separate goals and paths. Ju In-gong recalls that he's beaten Night Saga more than 10 times since childhood. He knows every character, item, location, and event like the back of his hand. But this remake is something more. This is the first game released after the explosion of virtual reality systems on the market later. Back in his apartment, Ju In-gong sits down and prepares the setup. He loads the chip into his full dive helmet and plugs in the cartridge. As he waits, buzzing with anticipation, he mentions maybe he should take it easy. Only 8 hours of playtime tonight. The moment he's teleported into the game, he stares up at the blindingly bright ceiling, wondering aloud if the load-in was successful. He remarks that Night Saga always starts with the player waking up in a bed. That's the real beginning, but this time something feels off. The body he's in doesn't look familiar. Just then, a rough voice calls out to ask if he's still asleep and tells him to get moving, because today's a busy day. Ju In-gong marvels at how lifelike the graphics are indistinguishable from reality. When he voices this, a massive orc looks at him confused and asks what he means by graphic. Ju In-gong can't believe he's holding a fluid conversation with an NPC. He says the advertisements never mentioned anything like this. He asks the orc for his name, and the orc replies that he's Carrick. Carrick then calls him Prince Sutra and tells him to hurry. Ju In-gong immediately recognizes the name Shooter Ignis, the Demon King's 9th son. He comments that he didn't even get to pick his character, and wonders why the game forced him into this role. Opening the status window, he sees that he's level 1 and 14 years old. His stats are embarrassingly low, just 5 in everything. He notes that even the standard NPC starts with 10s across the board. He checks his skill list. One skill is called Conquest, and the other is Protagonist Setting Adjustment. The latter name makes him pause. He wonders aloud if it means exactly what it suggests. Carrick interrupts, shouting at him to get a move on. He says he's got it, and steps outside, stunned. What greets him is a long line of orcs stretching out in formation. He asks why the atmosphere feels like they're heading into battle. Carrick dismisses his comment and says they need to move. There are Red Thunder orcs causing trouble. He tells him this will be his first real battle. In-gong, confused, asks where the tutorial is. Carrick explains that the Red Thunder orc tribe has rebelled, and together with the 7th prince and 8th princess, they're going to help suppress the uprising. Ju In-gong asks why they're only bringing 10 people if it's a full-blown war. Carrick insists he told him yesterday that this was just supposed to be a patrol. Ju In-gong questions whether he actually said that, and Carrick looks at him strangely, wondering why he's been acting off all day. Opening his mini-map, Ju In-gong remarked that he knew there'd be one. He's relieved. It makes navigation so much easier, and he decides to keep it open permanently. He notices a hidden path and wonders if it's part of an event. He tells Carrick that their current route is way too slow and says he knows a shortcut. They begin the detour, making their way through a forest and eventually scaling a cliff. Ju In-gong looks completely out of breath, but before them stands a hidden zone marked by 2 enormous stone gates. Carrick looks surprised and asks how Ju In-gong knew about the place. He asks if he's a mage. Ju In-gong says he's not. The others note how drained he looked, and he admits he underestimated how trash his stamina would be, but he just wants to see if he can open the door. As he steps forward, a golden light envelopes him. He freezes, wondering what's happening. A notification pops up. He's leveled up. He questions if he really just gained a level from walking. Even stranger, all his stats rose by 2 points. He mutters that this is insanely broken. The sound of crumbling stone follows. Carrick asks if they're moving in. Ju In-gong doesn't know what's inside, but since he's not alone, he says it should be manageable. He reflects that a real protagonist doesn't die when falling off a cliff. He gets a chance instead. They move through the gaping entrance of the cave. Carrick mentions it looks like a dwarf tunnel. Ju In-gong objects, saying dwarves aren't supposed to be in this this region. They're meant to live in the demon realm. Carrick responds that they don't anymore, but long ago they did. Ju and Gong asks Carrick if the dwarves all migrated, and Carrick replies that he doesn't know the full story. Only the legends passed down through the orc tribes. As they venture deeper into the cavern, a gleam catches their eyes. A mound of treasure lies ahead, scattered with abandoned weapons and gear. The orcs begin hooting with excitement, grabbing whatever they can get their hands on, exclaiming that the dwarves must have left behind some incredible loot. Ju and Gong watches them go wild, but remains still. He can't use any of it. The level requirements are far too high and his pitiful stats leave him locked out from wielding even the most basic items. He mutters that they might as well hang on to the gear anyway, and wonders how to stash it. Picking one up, he says, store under his breath, and it vanishes, tucked neatly into his inventory. He confirms to himself that it works just as expected. Touch the item, think the word, and it's his. Then his eyes shift to the minimap. A sudden cluster of red dots appears on the outer edge. He questions whether they represent enemies, and immediately warns everyone to fall back without warning. A section of the wall cracks apart and detonates, launching several works off their feet. Out of the dust steps a towering figure, a red thunder orc. He announces that their arrival was anticipated. His name is Caitlin, commander of the tribe. He bellows an order to his men to kill them all. The battle erupts in chaos. Works on Ju and Gong Snyder, cut down in waves. A few manage to fight back, but they're outnumbered and outmatched. As the clash continues, momentum begins to shift ever so slightly. Ju Gong, watching from the rear, ponders whether it's worth diving in to snag a few kills and earn some experience. He sneaks behind one of the red orcs locked in combat and lunges, attacking with full force. His blades shatter on contact. Stunned, he stares down at the broken weapons, realizing it was probably cheap junk. The red orc turns its fury toward him. Ju and Gong panics and bolt, screaming, only to trip on a rock and face plant into the ground. A damage notification flashes, 14 health lost. He still has 5 mana remaining, but now the red orc is closing in, ready to strike. The killing blow. Carrick arrives just in time. Intercepting the attack, he shouts at Ju and Gong, asking what he's doing and telling him to move, but Ju and Gong is paralyzed, his entire body trembling. He tells himself it's just a game, but the fear feels too real. He doesn't want to die. Not like this. He declares that he's had enough for today and pulls up the menu, trying to escape. He says the realism is overwhelming, terrifying. A glance at his character sheet reveals something unexpected. His species is listed as Gonda RV. Even stranger, he has no active skills, no logout option either. He begins to panic, wondering if he's trapped inside the game as he searches for answers. Kitchen locks eyes with him and begins chanting. A volley of magical attacks rains down, piercing Ju and Gong's body. Pain flares through him, knocking him against a cliff wall. His vision begins to blur. He gasps for breath as his consciousness fades. Suddenly, he finds himself in a different space, a void perhaps within his own mind. He questions if this is the afterlife, convinced that Caitlin finished him off. But then a golden light blooms ahead. A woman's voice echoes in the darkness, declaring that he is bound by fate to this world. She tells him to conquer and rule through absolute subjugation as she extends her hands. Jean Gong notices her heterochromia dark eyes, 2 different colors staring into him. Before you can ask who or what she is, the light engulfs him completely. Back on the battlefield, the green orcs continue to struggle. Kitchen moves to reinforce his warriors and mocks the audacity of such a small group to challenge his tribe. He decides that there's no point in dragging things out. He commands his troops to slaughter every last one of them. Ju and Gong rises to his feet, bewildered. He wonders if he just experienced some kind of awakening. Caitlin notices him standing and demands to know how he's still alive. A notification flashes in Ju and Gong's vision. Telekinesis, level 1 acquired. He mutters in disbelief, questioning when he even obtained that skill. Another surprise hit. His secondary job is now listed as Knight of Conquest. Kitchen yells at his forces to focus all attacks on the boy. Carrick instantly realizes what's happening. He roars that they must protect the prince at all costs. No harm must come to him. Ju and Gong stands frozen, eyes glued to his status window. He says this class, this job, it never existed in the original game. He then plunges his blade into the ground, murmuring that it feels like second nature, as if the knowledge of it has always been inside him. He looks forward, proclaiming that the power of conquest is the power power of kings. Raising his voice, he invokes the phrase under the king's banner. A golden light swirls around him and flows outward, enveloping the orc warriors. The buff takes hold. Orcs begin shouting, but they're filled with strength. They charge at the Red Thunder tribe like a tidal wave. One worker punches straight through an enemy's chest with bare hands. They no longer need weapons. They're unstoppable. Kitchen panic. He demands to know how the enemy's strength surged so suddenly. His eyes trace the golden energy back to its source. Ju Gong furious. He launches a barrage of 4 attacks straight at him. Jin Gong sees them coming, but before they land, Carrick leaps in, effortlessly deflecting them all. Watching Carrick in action, Ju Gong gains confidence. He tells Carrick to push forward his buff, amplifying every movement. Kitchen realizes the tide has turned. He pleads for them to stop, but it's too late. Carrick barrels into him and sends his head flying. The remaining Red Thunder orcs see their leader's head roll across the ground and immediately flee in terror. The green orcs give chase, shouting that none shall escape. A system message appears in front of Ju Gong. A general's achievements belong to his king. 3 level ups hit him in rapid succession. Still catching his breath, Ju Gong wonders aloud what's happening. Carrick stares at him from a distance, eyes wide, questioning where this power came from. He looks at Ju Gong again, this time with our unsure if the prince is the source of the miracle they just witnessed. Later, back at camp, Ju Gong frantically scrolls through his menu. He says the same thing over and over. There's no exit button. No matter how hard he looks, it's just not there. He repeats to himself that he needs to calm down. Just breathe. There are only 2 possibilities. 1, he's trapped in virtual reality, and a bug on the outside might eventually be patched out. 2, and this is the crazy one, this isn't a game anymore, like a novel or a manga. He's somehow crossed into a world that only resembles the game he knew. The environment is so vivid, so detailed that Ju Gong can't help but feel like it's no longer a simulation. The textures, the temperature of the air, the way every sound echoes through stone. It all feels too real. He notes with some quiet amusement that even his body, down to the most private details, is rendered without any censorship. That small fact reinforces the idea that this world might not just be virtual. He wonders if perhaps he truly crossed into another realm. The troubling thought passes through him. What if dying is the only way out? But he immediately dismisses the idea. That's not a risk he's willing to test for now, he tells himself. At least he is not an orc or ogre. That's something. And more importantly, he's in the role of a prince, the golden spoon among golden spoons. Life, for the moment, is in his favor. Carrick enters, asking if he has a moment to speak, given the strange permanence of his situation. Ju Gong mentally accepts his new name Sutra, as it's what everyone here calls him. Sutra asks what Carrick wants. Carrick explains that he'd like to request a duel. He adds that although Sutra is a prince, he is also a leader, and for a warrior like Carrick, it's only proper to understand the combat capabilities of the one he serves. Sutra raises a brow, asking if there's a real reason behind this. Carrick offers him a training sword and assures him not to worry. He intends to go easy, he should. Ray scoffs at the formality, saying that if they're doing this, then they should do it right. With that, he lunges in first, sword raised. Carrick braces himself as Shutter's blade crashes down on his head, followed by a series of frantic stabs that barely faze the orc warrior. Carrick comments that it feels like being tapped by an egg. Then, with a lazy swing, he knocks Shooter flying backward with ease, rubbing the back of his head. Shooter mutters that Carrick should have warned him before hitting that hard. As he rises, something catches his eye. Basic swordsmanship. Level 1 has been unlocked. Confused, he wonders when that happened. Then it clicks. It's just like what happened with telekinesis. He speculates that perhaps he gains new skills by experiencing the actions firsthand, even when they're done to him. Carrick suggests they end the spar and get something to eat, but Shooter shakes his head, declaring that it's far from over. He steadies his stance and charges again, this time with a sharper, more focused thrust. Carrick blocks it with ease, but notes that his movements have definitely improved. He wonders aloud why Shooter was so clumsy earlier. His skills haven't leveled up per se, but his technique has adapted quickly. Carrick swings once more, forcing Shooter to leap back. He seems to be enjoying the match. He asks if he can handle him now, and inquires about his current level. Carrick says his last recorded level was 21. 21. Shooter, opening his status window, replies that he'll catch up soon. It's revealed that he's now at level 7. He explains to himself that in this world, people have levels, but unlike him, most can't see them directly. They rely on level measuring spells. Meanwhile, he has full access to stats and the ability to allocate bonus points from level ups, a tremendous advantage. He launches himself forward, feet pushing off the ground as he meets Carrick in a flurry of strikes. Each blow is more precise than the last. He reflects that this means he can grow stronger, and not just gradually. His growth is exponential, far beyond what others are capable of. Then his thoughts drift to the long arc ahead. The narrative isn't linear. There are several major events before the conclusion. The most critical among them is a force event known as the Day of the Massacre. It's marked in Demon Realm history as occurring in the year 517. During this event, Zephyr, the second son of the Demon King, murders all his brothers to achieve his ambition, and since that includes every prince, it means Shooter on that list. Fortunately, the current year's 512. He still has time, 5 years, but to survive, he must stop the massacre before it happens. Ideally, he must become stronger than Zephyr himself. Carrick calls out, saying he's been looking all over for him. Shooter asks what's going on. Carrick reminds him that today is the scheduled meeting. Shooter frowns, unsure what meeting he's referring to, but Carrick insists they move. Everyone is already waiting. Back at camp, Shooter finds himself seated at a table across from 2 others. He laughs nervously, saying they arrived early. Across from him sit his older siblings. His brother, the 7th prince, introduces himself as Chris Moonlight and comments on Shutter's sudden formality, telling him to relax their family. His sister, the 8th princess, Caitlin Moonlight, adds that it's her first time meeting him in person. Chris tells him there's no need for honorifics and that he can simply call them brother and sister. Shooter agrees. In his thoughts, he identifies them as children of the 4th queen, Ellen Moonlight, ruler of the lycanthrope. He remembers that even in the original game, they gave him a tough time during battles. He also recalls a grim detail just 1 year before the Day of the Massacre. Both Chris and Caitlin are killed. The cause Zephyr, alongside the Demon King's other children. Their bloodline threatened his claim to power. But Caitlin had another secret. She wasn't the Demon King's true daughter. She was illegitimate. Caitlin turns to Shooter, questioning why he deviated from the plan. She says she only asked him to scout, not to engage in combat. He replies that he hadn't expected the enemy to appear there. Caitlin steps closer, examining him. She asks if he's hurt, saying he needs to be more careful. She reminds him he's still the weakest among their siblings. Shooter apologizes, then pauses. He silently questions why they're being so kind to him, or the Demon King's children. Truly this united? The thought lingers in the game. Everything was scripted dialogue, betrayal, hierarchy. But here, the people, their emotions, their choices. It all feels unpredictable. It feels real. Chris agrees with Caitlin, warning Shooter that next time, if he pulls a reckless stunt like that, he'll get chewed out properly. Shooter nods, saying he understands, though in the back of his mind, he can't help but question why they're being so kind to him. In the game, they were cold, calculating, occasionally hostile, but here there's warmth. He considers the nature of the lycanthrope. They're known for their vitality beams overflowing with life force. He recalls that many of them were adept at using aura. That sparks an idea. If he can replicate how he unlocked telekinesis by directly experiencing it, then maybe he can awaken aura the same way. He says he has a request. Chris raises an eyebrow and asks what kind of request. That's when Shudder, his expression lights up, and he declares that he wants Chris to hit him with aura. Both Chris and Caitlin are visibly disturbed. They look at each other wondering if they just heard him right, or if he's developed some kind of strange, masochistic streak. The scene cuts away as battle rages elsewhere. The red orcs are being blown off their feet, Greenwork clashing with them in full-scale war. Chaos consumes the battlefield. A massive red orc suddenly lashes out, not just at enemies, but at his own men, striking down anyone nearby. Several warriors attempt to subdue him, but he effortlessly dispatches them. One manages to nick his arm, and the giant pauses, staring at the wound. Rage flashes across his face. The offender barely has time to regret his mistake before he's reduced to a spray of crimson mist. The shockwave from the blow sends the surrounding fighters flying. The red orc bellows, demanding that not a single enemy escape. He promises reward to the one who brings the most kills. Oddly, the green orcs seem to heed his words as though he's leading them, not fighting against them. Meanwhile, Shooter appears appears to be unconscious. His mind drifts into the dreamscape. There he sees the mysterious woman who appeared during his awakening. He questions who she is and, glancing around, asks who the other shadowy figures are. Characters he doesn't recognize from the game. The woman steps closer, but says nothing. Her form dissolves once again into radiant light, forcing Shooter to shield his eyes. When he opens them, he's awake. Back in his room, he mutters, wondering aloud what kind of dream that was. Then a voice whispers near his ear. Herrick is beside him, murmuring in amusement. Startled, Shooter jumps back, exclaiming that Carrick nearly gave him a heart attack. Herrick replies that he seems well enough, just confused why he begged his siblings to beat him up. Herrick says he had been whining for it, and tells him to look at the result. Sure enough, shudders, now emitting a faint shimmer of aura. It worked. He says he can actually feel it. Herrick asks if just getting hit by aura is enough to awaken it. Shooter replies that it seems to help, at least partially. Carrick then asks if it was him, Shooter, who filled them with power during the last battle in the cave. Shooter nods, and Carrick simply says he understands now. Shooter shifts focus, asking if anything happened while he was unconscious. Carrick informs him that the main force triumphed over the Red Orc. Shooter raises an eyebrow. He had assumed his siblings were sent to deal with the threat. Herrick laughs at the thought and says, that's absurd. He asks if Shooter knows just how massive the Red Orc tribe is. Shooter asks who led the operation. Carrick answers that it was General Bundle. The name shocks Shooter. Bundle is one of the strongest warriors in the realm. Back when Shooter played as Zephyr, Bundle had become one of his most dependable subordinates. That memory sparks another realization. Bundle doesn't become Zephyr's subordinate until the year 515. It's currently 512. That means Bundle is still free. He hasn't pledged to anyone yet. Shooter sees a golden opportunity. He knows Bundle's weaknesses, his favorite foods, his preferred rewards, his fighting style. Most importantly, he knows the key to recruiting him, defeating him in a duel. With this knowledge, he's confident that he can recruit Bundle before Zephyr ever gets the chance. It's a solid first goal. Establish a loyal and powerful subordinate of his own. Back at Caitlyn's camp, Chris can be heard yelling in disbelief. He demands to know if Shooter really reached the basics of aura in just a single day. Shooter says that he dumped all his level up points into aura, so this outcome should be expected. It's not even about specializing. Aura passively enhances all physical stats, making it far more valuable than telekinesis. Chris mutters that it's ridiculous, then wonders aloud if it has something to do with Shooter being a gondola VA. He asks if Shooter can draw a map of the burrows they explored. Shooter says he probably can. While he doesn't have an actual map, he does have his mini-map, which shows the layout in detail. He asks for paper and pen, and once given them, starts sketching. When he finishes, Chris examines the drawing and says it's even more accurate than their current map. He calls Shooter a genius. Shooter laughs modestly. Caitlyn informs them that the Red Orcs they encountered were wiped out, meaning the enemy doesn't yet know their burrows have been discovered. Chris notes that with this map, they can plan a sneak attack, but there's one more task they need from him. Shooter returns to the mountains. Carrick asks if it's another scouting mission. Shooter admits it is. After all, he's still the weakest among his siblings. Carrick is just grateful that reinforcements arrived, and Shooter gives credit to the achievements they recently earned. Carrick agrees, chuckling ahead. They spot two figures, Caitlyn now cloaked in a robe, and another woman. Shooter asks what's going on and why Caitlyn is dressed like that. She tells him to keep his voice down. She doesn't know what this mission holds, so she's going to follow him secretly and only intervene if it gets dangerous. The credit, she insists, needs to go solely to him. Shooter questions her logic, wondering if she's naive or just oddly supportive, but he decides not to refuse her help. The other woman introduces herself as Sarah, Caitlyn's adjutant. Shooter greets her politely. Caitlyn tells him to focus on scouting. They'll shadow him discreetly. He agrees, and the group heads back into the dwarven cave system they had explored before. As they proceed, Carrick comments that the rooms are strangely empty. It's as if everything of value was taken. Shooter agrees. It seems unlikely that the dwarves would leave their treasures behind. When he asks about the weapons they found earlier, Carrick says they probably weren't considered valuable by dwarven standards. Shooter admits that explanation makes sense. Suddenly, Carrick stiffens. He says something is coming. Shooter hears it too. He checks the minimap and confirms a swarm is heading their way. He opens his inventory and grins, saying he was ready for this. He reveals a flash magic item prepared in advance. He tells everyone to close their eyes when he gives the signal. At the cave's far end, dozens of creatures emerge. Spiders the size of dogs crawling over the rocks with boulders strapped to their back. Rock spiders monsters that thrive in dark environments, moving in packs and armed with venom capable of paralyzing prey. Shooter gives the signal and hurls the flash magic high. The moment it detonates, the cavern erupts in blinding golden light. The spiders screech, stunned and paralyzed. Shooter announces that light disables them completely. They're creatures of shadow. After all, he orders the team to finish them off. The warriors charge and blades drawn. The spiders attempt resistance, but they're hopelessly outmatched. The team tears through them with ease. Shooter watches with satisfaction. Another mission handled. Another step forward. Shooter lingers at the back lines, staying out of the immediate clash while scanning the battlefield through his minimap. He zooms in on the skirmish, noting that rock spiders always travel in groups, and each group is led by a single dominant boss. He identifies it quickly: larger, nastier, tucked deeper into the shadows. He tells Carrick to follow him, explaining that they're going to take out the boss directly. Carrick signals his understanding, and the two push through the battlefield with sharp focus, weaving between fighters and striking through gaps in the chaos. Eventually, the boss spider comes into view, massive, towering over the others, and already screaming as it detects their approach. Without hesitation, Carrick leaps high and brings his axe down with full force on the creature's shell. To his surprise, the attack does nothing. The blade bounces off harmlessly. Shooter grimaces and says that he forgot its shell is nearly impenetrable. Axes won't work here. The weakness is fire, but unfortunately he still hasn't unlocked any fire-based magic. Suddenly, the spider begins to reveal clusters of small, blinking eyes opening across its back. Carrick steps back in alarm as the boss locks onto him. The massive creature starts charging. Shooter panics and mutters that fire is the only way, but he doesn't have any. Just then, Caitlin's voice cuts in from behind, instructing him to raise his sword. He does as told, and flames suddenly envelop the blade. Shooter gasps, stunned, and asks if she's using magic. She confirms it, asking if the enchantment will suffice. From behind, she channels her energy into him, acting as magical support. The boss spider lunges as it nears. Shooter embraces himself the moment the dust kicks up from the impact. He bursts out of the haze. Charging forward, he scales the spider's leg and fusing his newly enchanted sword with his basic swordsmanship. He calls out the technique Burning Blade. The flame-imbued blade begins slicing into the creature's thick armor, leaving glowing red lines across its hide. The spider shrieks, its body engulfed in flames as Shooter continues slashing. The flames consume it completely. Then the glow hits him, a familiar golden light, signaling multiple level ups. Notifications flash across his vision, and his level climbs to 9. He shouts in excitement. Caitlin asks if he's alright and what that light was. He hesitates, then claims it's a kind of blessing. Nothing to worry about. She questions whether it's a gift tied to being a Gandervier. He affirms it. She then asks how he handled the rock spiders so well. His movements were too precise to be mere guesswork. He responds that he read about them in a book. In truth, he fought them dozens of times while playing the game, and every move they made was burned into his muscle memory. Carrick suddenly calls for his attention, saying he found something. They walk over and uncover a hidden door. They push it open and step into a dimly lit chamber. Shooter freezes. He recognizes the structure instantly. It's a dwarf-style town portal. Carrick asks if he knows what it is, and Shooter replies that he is a guest. The markings are dwarven, and while he never encountered one playing a Zephyr, he did as the human hero. He explains that it probably activates when infused with magic. He tells Caitlin it seems to be a teleportation device. She asks if he's sure. Sarah, observing the architecture, says it aligns with Shutter's theory. Caitlin wonders if they can determine the destination. Sarah explains that there might be some inscriptions nearby. Carrick points to a wall, noting some faint carvings. They all gather around. The script is unfamiliar to most of them. Carrick asks if Caitlin can read it. She says she can't. Sarah also admits she's clueless. Then Shooter surprises everyone by reading it aloud. He says that it identifies as Cisco Mountains Portal Number 2, connected to Portal Number 3. Mid-sentence, he pauses, wondering how he's even able to understand it. A system prompt confirms what just happened. He's acquired the Dwarven script skill. He can now read the language fluently. He's stunned by how easy it was and realizes that even languages can be acquired through experience here. Carrick, wide-eyed, asks if he actually read that. Shooter says yes. Apparently he can now. Caitlin presses him, asking when he learned to do that. Sarah asks what the inscription says at the bottom. Shooter explains that the portal activates when infused with magic and suggests Caitlin try it. She asks why he doesn't do it himself. He avoids saying the real reason he can't use magic, and just says he's still clumsy with spell work. Caitlin steps forward and begins channeling energy into the portal. The orb embedded in the center pulses with soft blue light, growing stronger until it expands outward. A projected image appears, an aerial map of the mountain range. They can see their current location clearly, along with Portal 3 in the distance. They speculate that this might be where the dwarves are now hiding. Herrick notes that the Red Orc main force is stationed just beyond these mountains. Shooter agrees. This is their chance to strike first. Caitlin says they should halt here and discuss the next steps later. Back at camp, Chris greets them with excitement, proclaiming that Shooter really is a lucky charm. Shooter tries to deflect it, saying it was just coincidence, but can't stop the sting of his brother's heavy-handed praise, both literally and emotionally. Chris then says that if there's anything Shooter wants, he should speak up as his brother and leader. He'll do anything for him. Shooter says it's fine, but Chris insists. He says a reward is owed, and refusal would disappoint him. Shooter asks if even a slightly unreasonable request would be acceptable. Chris chuckles and tells him to ask. Shooter takes a breath and says that he wants to learn the Beast God Fist. Chris freezes momentarily. Shooter explains that due to his level, weapons are off the table, but skills that's different. The Beast God Fist is a legendary martial art passed through the lycanthrope royal line, an S-rank combat technique. He knows it's a lot to ask, and says he'll understand if Chris refuses. He lowers his head slightly, and says he expected as much, but Chris, after a pause, agrees to teach him, though not the secret technique. That's off limit. Instead, he offers to teach him aura, saying it should be more than enough as a gift. Shooter is momentarily speechless. Chris mistakes the silence for disappointment and asks if he's unhappy. Shooter quickly says that he's thrilled, overjoyed even. Chris smiles warmly, places a hand on his shoulder, and says that from now on, aside from Caitlin, he wants to consider Shooter a true younger brother, not just in name, but in bond. Shooter considers Chris's offer, admitting to himself that it's a surprisingly sincere gesture. It carries weight, but more than that, it's not a bad idea. He agrees without hesitation. The two shake hands firmly, sealing the start of something new. Caitlin looks pleased, her smile subtle but genuine. Shooter states that from now on, they should work together and work well. An alliance is formed, not bound by oaths or royal decree, but by something far more practical, mutual interest and trust. For now, it's a regular alliance, but he knows it has the potential to become something much stronger. The scene shifts, cutting away to the jagged peaks near Portal 3, deep within the Cisco Mountains. There, nestled among the rocks, lies a Red Orc outpost inside one of its tents. A group of orcs converse. One says that the enemy probably didn't come here targeting her specifically. Another scoffs, asking what their great princess is even doing here. Bound tightly and gagged, the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, sits with a look of cold fury in her eyes. Meanwhile, Shooter inspects his stat sheet. His gaze lingers on his charisma stat, now his lowest. He notes that when he started leveling up, every stat increased by 2 points with each level, but recently, charisma only seems to increase by 1. He wonders why that is in the original game. Charisma and appearance were separate. Appearance dictated how attractive a character looked, while charisma measured how well others responded to them, how persuasive, how inspiring. It makes sense, he reasons. His progression has been solid, and overall he's gaining power faster than most. More pressing, however, is that he's approaching level 10. In the game, reaching level 10 unlocked a new tier for unique skills. For luck, it enhanced the chosen one for Zephyr. It strengthened Descendant of Darkness. Shooter speculates that hitting level 10 might boost one of his own unique abilities. It's a moment he's anticipating. Carrick enters, announcing that preparations are complete and asking if Shooter is ready to move out. Shooter replies that he is. Carrick, in an unusually cheerful tone, says that he seems to be in a good mood and asks what happened. Shooter simply says it's nothing. Outside, the orc units stand at attention, ready and waiting. Shooter gives the signal, and the expedition begins. They head back toward the mountains, crossing the rugged terrain to return to the cave housing the portal. Inside, the lycanthrope, mages and warriors are already at work. Chris stands near the portal door overseeing the operation. He turns to the mages and asks if the investigation is complete. One of them nods, confirming that the portal indeed connects to the river near the Zalka mountain range. Chris asks if the portal is functioning properly. The mage replies that there are no issues. The structure is stable and as expected of dwarven craftsmanship, built to last. Chris then orders the activation. The mages channel their mana into the stone gate. The portal hums to life, radiating with light as it stabilizes and opens a path through the mountains. Chris steps forward. Shooter watches in awe, seeing a functioning portal up close. An actual physical gate is overwhelming. It's one thing to use them in game, but this is reality. Caitlin nudges him, asking what he's waiting for. He assures her that he's coming and steps through. The teleportation is seamless. A blink, and then he's standing on the other side, immediately struck by what he sees. The Red Orc encampment is right in front of him. Chris, now by his side, remarks that it's exactly as expected. Judging by the layout and size, he estimates there are around 5,000 troops stationed here. He explains that if they attack from the rear, their first objective should be the supply lines. If General Bonneville attacks from the front, it will draw their focus. Meanwhile, infiltrators can burn the enemy's food stores. Sarah suddenly interjects, saying something doesn't feel right. The camp seems half empty. Chris nods, noting that the troop count appears off. He speculates that they might have already launched an attack elsewhere. Shooter turns his head, hearing something, a distant echo of steel clashing against steel. He asks what that sound is. It's faint but unmistakable. Chris instructs him to focus his aura into his eyes. Shooter complies, and as he enhances his vision, the battlefield ahead comes into focus. Red Orcs are engaged in a fight, but the group they're battling isn't bundles. Caitlin notes the same thing, asking who the other fighters are. Chris confirms that Bonneville wasn't scheduled for any engagements today. The timing doesn't add up. Shooter narrows his eyes, and finally sees them clearly. Agile warriors with smaller frames mounted on swift Dracos. He recognizes them instantly. Dark elves. He states it aloud, saying that the mounted warriors are definitely dark elves. Caitlin is stunned, asking if he's sure. He replies that the smaller builds and Draco mounts make it obvious. Chris, watching the battle shift, notes that the dark elves seem to be retreating. Their leader must have fallen, he says, and now they're pulling back fast. Carrick, watching the aftermath, asks if that really was the end of the fight. Shudder his mind races, wondering why dark elves would be out here at all. Back at their encampment, General Blundell is in conversation with Chris. He mentions that word has reached him. Prince Chris, his forces discovered the dwarf portal. He says he's impressed, but also curious. How did they know where it would lead? Chris clarifies that it wasn't his doing. It was the 9th Prince Shuja who discovered the portal's destination. Shooter modestly says it was just luck. Seeing Blondell again brings a strange warmth in his past playthroughs. Bundle had always been a key figure, formidable, loyal. Deadly Bundle says that such sharp work deserves recognition and promises that Shooter will be properly rewarded at the Demon King's castle. Chris shifts the subject, asking about the earlier skirmish outside the encampment. Bundle explains that the Dark Elves had unexpectedly joined the battle on their own initiative. Chris questions their reasoning, asking if they were dispatched as reinforcements from the castle. Bundle admits that the situation is unclear. He says the Dark Elves claim they were conducting a preliminary scout before formally joining the campaign, but things spiraled out of control. And now there's a larger problem. Chris asks what that is. Bundle reveals that the Dark Elf unit's commander was captured by the Red Orc. Chris says that explains the sudden retreat, and Shuja, now fully invested, asks the question on everyone's mind: who exactly is their missing commander? Bundle says that the captured commander is someone they all know well. It's none other than the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, their sister. Chris and Caitlin exchange startled glances, both visibly caught off guard by the revelation. Felicia, as she recalls, is the daughter of the 3rd Queen, a former Dark Elf princess who once held the name Doomblade. She is also the twin sister of the 5th Prince, Sylvan, in the original game. Both Felicia and Sylvan were loyal to the faction of the 4th Princess Anastasia to Creon, a political rival to the protagonist's path. Because of that, they were always positioned as antagonists. So what is Felicia doing here now? In this timeline, Shooter ponders whether she inserted herself into the conflict just to claim credit or disrupt operations. Chris speculates that maybe the Red Orcs don't realize who they have. Perhaps they're unaware she's a royal. Bundle, however, says he hasn't been able to confirm that yet. Chris asks what their plan is. Bundle says that ideally they'll rescue her, but not at the cost of their entire force. If the opportunity arises, they'll strike. Negotiations are possible, but Bundle clarifies that he has no intention of bowing first. If the Red Orcs want to talk, they'll need to make the first move. Chris acknowledges that and says he understands. Bundle adds that he'll work on gathering more intel from his side and asks them to stay stay in contact if anything developed. The communication ends there. Chris turns and remarks dryly that their sister has become a prisoner of war. Caitlin responds with urgency, insisting that if she's still alive, then they must save her. Chris agrees in theory, but reminds her that attempting a rescue could lead to significant losses. Caitlin rejects the notion of leaving her behind. She says that Felicia is their sister and family is not optional. Chris pauses before saying he understands, but he also notes that the situation is delicate. Shooter watches them silently, trying to make sense of the tension. There's something unspoken between Chris and Felicia, something Shooter doesn't yet know. Outside, the night air is thick with anticipation. Lycanthrope move in disciplined formations, flanked by green-skinned orcs within the tent. The leaders are gathered. Chris lays out the final plan. He explains that General Bond will engage the main force of the Red Orcs head-on, while their attention is diverted. Chris's units will launch a surprise attack from the rear. The goal is to destabilize the enemy lines, create chaos, and disrupt logistics. Caitlin and Shooter will each lead their own squads with assigned tasks. Shooter asks for clarification whether the mission includes rescuing Felicia. Chris says that it is, but not as the top priority. First, they are to destroy the enemy's food supplies and armory. Only then should they attempt to rescue, and if things spiral out of control, the order is clear: retreat immediately. They cannot sacrifice more lives just for one person. Caitlin clenches her fist, anger bubbling to the surface. Chris tells her to remain silent, reminding her that he is the commanding officer. She fires back, accusing him of treating Felicia like a liability instead of family. He responds coldly, saying he can't allow emotional attachments to jeopardize the mission. Shooter observes the exchange quietly, wondering if there's more between them than politics. Maybe something personal had happened between Chris and Felicia, a conflict not known to others. Whatever it is, it runs deep. The night arrives in full, blanketing the operation under a veil of darkness from the cliffs overlooking the Red Orc encampment. Chris and the others watch. The enemy camp is still active. Even at night, guards' patrol fires flicker, and sentries stay alert. Then, without warning, a massive explosion tears through one section of the camp. Soldiers are launched into the air as General Bonneville barrels and leading a vicious frontal assault. He roars at his troops to kill them all, his voice booming across the battlefield. Elsewhere at Shooter's position, Carrick sees the signal and asks if it's time to move. They hold their position, briefly watching his orcs surge forward like an unstoppable wave bundle. After delivering the first strike issues an immediate order for all units to pull back from his cliffside perch. Chris sees the retreat and recognizes the opening. This is their moment. He turns to his team and orders everyone into position. He reminds Shooter and Caitlin to stick to their assignment, destroy the supplies, and rescue Felicia if possible. Then he gives the order charge. The second wave hits hard. The Red Orcs, already scattered from the first attack, are thrown into confusion. Their lines falter. Their defenses crumble. Caitlin shouts for Shooter to stay alert. He tells her to do the same. Opening his mini-map, Shooter scans the terrain, marking a path that cuts through the least fortified areas. He notes the safest route and points out their target, the supply depot. He says they need to move fast and hit it first, because once the chaos settles, their window will slam shut. Carrick barrels ahead, roaring that he'll tear through every last one of them. His massive frame slams into the front lines, cleaving a path through Red Orcs like living battering ram. One of the orcs counters with a vicious swing aimed directly at Carrick's exposed flank. He realizes too late that he won't be able to deflect in time until something flashes past him. A dagger spins through the air and slams into the attacking orc's skull with pinpoint accuracy. Carrick turns just in time to see Shooter lowering his arm, a small grin forming on his face. He says that it worked better than he expected. Carrick blinks and asks when he learned how to throw like that. Shooter shrugs it off, saying he got the skill last night after trying it once. Apparently that was enough. Carrick nods, then gestures toward the supply depot ahead. He says they've located the food storage and asks if they should burn it down now. Shooter replies that they should follow the plan, but his mind drifts elsewhere. If Felicia is being held nearby and they set fire to everything, there's a chance she'll be caught in the blaze. They need to find her first. He quickly opens his minimap and scans for markers. He explains that NPCs with neutral alignment are usually color-coded blue or purple. After a moment, he spots a location. He signals Carrick to follow, and the two of them charge toward a nearby tent. Inside, Shooter announces that this has to be the place from the shadows. A voice calls out to him. He spins to see Felicia shackled and sitting on the ground, looking at him with disbelief. She demands to know what the hell he's doing here. Shooter Shooter tells her to stay still as he hurries over and begins working on the chains. He explains that this place is about to go up in flames, and if she wants to live, they need to leave immediately. All the while, he's thinking strategically. If he saves her now, she'll owe him a royal debt that could pay dividends later. Felicia remains confused, still asking why he, of all people, is here. Once the chains drop, they make a run for it. Shooter says they need to regroup with Chris and Caitlin. Felicia, still catching her breath, asks if they truly came to rescue her. Shooter answers with surprise, asking why she doubt that. She tells him that he doesn't understand how far removed he is from the internal politics. It's not that simple. Before she can elaborate, Carrick shouts from ahead. Enemy reinforcements are swarming in. Shooter tells Felicia to stay close. She nods, but hesitates for a moment, asking when he started using her name so casually. As they sprint, she notices a glint of danger, an incoming spear from behind. She shouts a warning and shoot, returns just in time to take the fall, hits straight through the back. Blood erupts from his mouth, and his entire body ignites in sudden magical flames. Carrick and Felicia scream his name as they watch in horror. His figure's engulfed, collapsing into a burning heap. Felicia's breathing quickens, panic rising. One of the orcs charges toward her before he can reach her. A fireball crashes into the orc's face, blasting it off its feet. Felicia spins, shocked to see Shooter standing upright again, stepping forward slowly through the smoke. His body glows faintly. He now possesses mana control level 1 and the fire arrows skill. A confident smirk plays across his lips as he begins hurling fiery projectiles with rapid precision, torching everything in sight. He laughs to himself, saying this is exactly the power he was hoping to find: real magic, raw, explosive, and satisfying. Even at level 1, the fire arrow spell hits like a meteor. Then behind him, a frost blast erupts, shoots, returns, and sees a red orc mage drawing another spell, this time an ice arrow. He watches the projectile take shape and sees it's aimed directly at Felicia. She rushes toward him, asking if he's okay. Shooter pushes her aside just as the arrows launch, telling her to stay back. In his mind, he says that he can't let her get hit, not when he's the one who triggered all this. This fight belongs to him now. The arrows strike. Ice detonates around him in a violent explosion, sending shards in every direction as the mist clears. Shooter stands barely upright, an arrow embedded in his chest. His health bar drops to 13 out of 95. He gasps for breath, barely staying conscious. One more hit like that, and he's finished. Felicia runs to him, cursing him for being such an idiot. She demands to know who asked him to play the hero. Shooter watches her amused. He wonders if she's acting like a sunray or if she's genuinely concerned. She snaps at him again, calling him the weakest among the siblings, and asking why he thought he had to protect her. He smiles weakly, thinking that her misunderstanding is working in his favor. He looks toward the enemy mage, ready for another attack, but finds the orc slumped over, unconscious. Felicia kneels beside him, asking where he learned magic. Shooter realizes she's much stronger than he originally thought, and now she believes he did all of this for her. A soft green light begins to glow around his chest. She's healing him. Her hands shimmer as the magic seeps into his skin, sealing the wound. Shooter is stunned. He just gained the heal skill, another ability to add to his growing arsenal. He muses that if he keeps surviving attacks like this, he'll eventually learn everything. He mutters that her healing magic is insane, but it's to be expected from the so-called genius mage of their generation. Felicia asks if he's feeling better, if he can move. Shooter says he's okay now thanks to her. She starts to ask what he means by that, but before he can explain, thunderous stomping begins to echo through the cave. They turn in unison, and what they see sends a chill down their spines. A towering red-skinned brute storms into view, its size immense, its presence suffocating. Felicia demands to know what the hell that is. Shooter